What's up, guys? Today I'm going to teach you how to basically switch to Linux. You could be doing that for a multitude of reasons, mainly Microsoft being NAS right now in the current state of Windows 11 and Copilot, and they just shoving AI down your throat and ads. You could also care a bit about technology, and maybe you're trying to learn it for a job or school or something like that. And most especially if you work with IT, Linux is a plus unless you want to cap your own salary, basically. So you have to learn Linux one way or the other. And I guess this applies for IT in general, but today I'm gonna put you on basically on some real good skills for Linux, which is mainly searching for information. When you're dealing with Linux, you have so many commands. I think we are all very familiar with that. And we're not remembering everything, especially some of the most complex commands like OpenSSL, for instance, which is a if you work with system administrator, you're going to use a lot, but it is very complex, and you're not going to remember everything. So, what is the most important skill, undoubtedly for Linux, is looking up information. There are a couple of ways to do that. It depends on what kind of resources you have. So I'm gonna put you on some of those. But basically, terminal is a must. Uh, you hear a lot of folks saying, you need to use a terminal to use Linux. That's bullshit. Because at the end of the day, everything you're going to troubleshoot or schedule cron jobs, of course you can do it through a graphical user interface, but it's just terrible. It's just worse. It's more efficient to use a terminal, basically. Not to mention that if you work in IT, it's a must completely, especially if you get into futurely into Docker, Kubernetes, and all that stuff. You should learn how to use a terminal because most of the infrastructure in the cloud is Linux based, so it's important to be aware of it. So you see here that I type man, right? Man stands for manual, basically. And Linux has a manual for every single command, right? So, for instance, let's suppose a very simple command you're going to be doing a lot, which is chmod. What chmod does, basically, is it modifies permissions for a certain file, right? But, I mean, let's suppose I don't know anything about chmod. So, how do I start it? I mean, first I can just type chmod minus minus help. It will give me here if I just type it, and I'll get like a kind of summed up version of chmod and what it does basically. Yeah, change the mode of each file to mode. Basically, yeah, that's all that I need to know in a basis. Like I don't need to know that in-depth chmod to use it. But in case I want something more detailed or if this doesn't fit my use, you have the manual, right? Which is man. Basically, it's yeah, an interface to the system reference manuals, basically. Manual pager utils, right? This is what the manual does. It gives you like a very big display of options you have for certain commands, uses, and more like miscellaneous stuff like configurations and that kind of stuff. So you're going to use that a lot, especially when you're getting into commands like I said earlier, like OpenSSL. You're always going to be using the man command because it's impossible to remember every single Linux command. There are too many, and for each company you work in, for each use case you have, you're going to use a different one, right? So get used to man. I'm going to put you on specifically on man minus k, which basically looks up all the manual pages, right? And will give you a sum up of them and which commands do which things, basically, right? So you can do man minus k and follow that with the option you want, right? So in this case, I said group, right? Because let's suppose I want to manage some groups. What I would do here, I have then change group ownership, chown, change file owner and group, change password, update group passwords in bash mode. So this is a great feature, the man minus k, because let's be honest, you're not going to remember the name of the commands either. So most of the times you're going to learn, oh, I need to do something with groups, but what is it? And then you're going to remember, I can use the min minus k. And that will make your life a lot easier. You can also pipe this output into grep, right? And now I have the add. Now I can know how to create new groups. Now I know to do anything. Okay, so this is a very valuable thing to learn. The next thing I wanted to get to is this little package here, which is called tildir, which, to be honest, I think is one of the goats in Linux. As soon as you get into any computer, install this package because it is very useful. You're probably going to do something to use it, even though it's tildir. How you're going to use it is tldr, right? Too long, don't read. So you can like tldr and the name of the command you want. And this will give you like a bunch of usages of those commands. And this is great. You have no idea because these commands are actually the ones you're going to be using the most. So it's a very nice way to get a concise and it's a perfect way for you to get a command quickly without having to look through the man pages. Because I understand, especially for a beginner, man pages can be a little bit overwhelming, right? Because like you have all this data and it's all black and white. If you're not used to reading a lot, you're going to have trouble. Even if you are used to, you're going to have trouble. Also, just a heads up. If you use the man command, it's probably going to open up in a pager, right? So you can actually type forward slash and, for instance, look for specific terms, and they will be highlighted here, and then you can shift M or shift N to go to the next one. So now you have gone through the manual, the man minus K, and the TLDR. To install it is very simple. I mean, you just need to use the package manager of your operating system. So if you're in a Debian-based, it's probably going to be apt. Fedora-based, DNF, and Arch-based, pacman, right? So you can hear DNF, TLDR, and you can install it, and it's just going to ask you to update it. If I do recall, is this the command for updating, but it also says in the output. So I'm going to show you two more resources. Next one is going to be Apropos, which has a funny name. I know, kind of hard to memorize, but it's just very simple and fairly good. Now, I usually don't use Apropos as much as TLDR or TLDR because Apropos does not give you all the usages of it, right? What Apropos does is it basically gives you a description of the command, which, don't get me wrong, it can be useful, especially when you're using the min minus k, right? And then like you got all this, and that doesn't mean shit to you. Sorry for the word, but that doesn't mean shit to you. And then you want to get a better understanding of it, right? And then here, for instance, we are getting these numbers because manual pages are divided into sections. So it's different basically. For instance, section 8 of the main page, I think is sysadmin commands and that kind of stuff. So you have to specify it as well. Okay. Again, for all these commands, like you can, well, I guess we don't have a man for tilde, which is funny, but we have a man for apropos and apropos for man, if I recall. Let me see. Yeah. For all of these commands, you can like just search up one to the other, basically. Another great thing is the -h and minus help option. Those two options are almost always universal for every single command. So usually you're going to be able to like put this and you're going to get usage. So I know here that I can put options and then the name of the login for the user, right? So this is very simple. Now, the next thing I want to get in details is if you have more than just the terminal, you're going to be able to use Google a lot. And Google is a lifesaver, don't get me wrong. Like, you need to use Google if you want to go anywhere in your IT career. Maybe the most special and important skill in IT is self-learning. So learn how to use Google, learn how to read documentation instead of watching YouTube videos. That only does not only goes for Linux, but if you're coding or if you're doing a project or messing around with infrastructure containers, there is nothing more valuable and that is going to impulse you forward as a professional than reading documentation. I cannot stress enough the importance of it, and you should get used to it as fast as possible. I know at first it might be a little bit overwhelming, especially if you're used to just watching YouTube videos, but documentation is what really is going to make you learn and not keep you in a tutorial hell. So get used to looking up problems on the official documentations, on Stack Overflow, on GitHub, on all that kind of stuff, right? And finally, for looking up information, you should. I mean, you don't. I'm not gonna say you should, but you should be using this terminal here or something like that. Basically, what it does is this has more features to make it more user friendly, like sensible scripting. Read your mind, literally, that does it because it captures your last commands and tries to find patterns on it, right? But it's funny because like I'm using Fish as my default shell for Linux, and if you let's suppose this kind of gives me a man minus k by itself, right? So I have here just by typing user and pressing tab, I have all these commands for users, and I have a short description of it, right? Not to count that syntax highlighting is better, and it's very good as a whole. I really recommend you to install this. It's not hard at all. All you need to do is basically get your specific pack manager, right? For instance, you have the DNF install fish pacman, so it's already on the Arch and Fedora based distros by default. You can download it from Debian, Ubuntu, CentOS. Although I think you guys are probably going to be using something along those lines if you're using a computer, unless you're a crazy guy and you're using Gentoo, right? But after you do that, you're basically going to have to set a default shell for your user, right? So you can do that with user mod, basically. Man user mod, and then let's see, shell. Okay, and then I can user mod minus s and add this here to my shell, basically. I guess we can. Let's look what it's at. Yeah, it's here. USR local bean fish. This is where it's going to, and you can add your default shell to that path, and you're going to have a fish shell. I guess that sums up this video. Basically, always try to learn how to find information rather than cramming in comments to your head because that is not going to work. Okay, thank you for watching this and have a great day.